My name is Marin Vale. I am standing in my driveway outside Reno, pressing the garage code I have used for 6 years. The little red light blinks once, then twice, then goes dead. My house is right in front of me. The porch chairs are still there. The wind chimes are still moving in the dry Nevada air. But somehow, while I was away for 12 days, my family decided it no longer belonged to me. The strange thing about shock is that it does not always arrive like a scream. Sometimes it comes quietly, with a plastic keypad, a blinking light, and your suitcase sitting beside your foot while you try not to understand what is already obvious. I pressed the code again. Nothing. Then I tried the side gate, even though I already knew it was useless. The latch had been replaced. The old bronze one, the one that stuck in the summer heat, was gone. In its place was a new black lock with a fresh scratch across the face, like someone had installed it in a hurry. Across the street, Mr. Harrow was watering a strip of yellow grass that had not been green since April. He looked at me, then looked away too fast. That was the first moment my stomach dropped. Mr. Harrow was not a man who looked away. He was retired, nosy, and kind in the way older neighbors sometimes are. He knew when packages arrived, when coyotes crossed the road, and when my trash bins stayed out too long. If something had happened to my house, he knew. I lifted my hand to wave. He shut off the hose and walked inside. That was when I called my mother. She answered after one ring. That alone told me everything had been planned. "Marin," she said. Not, "You're home." Not, "How is Oregon?" Not, "Are you all right after the drive?" Just my name, flat and careful, like she was reading it from a document. I asked her why my garage code did not work. There was a pause. In that pause, I heard dishes clink, a chair scrape, and someone breathing near the phone. My mother was not alone. "You should come over," she said. I looked at my house. The afternoon sun was hitting the front windows, and for a second I saw my own reflection in the glass. Dusty boots, work jacket, hair pulled back badly after a long drive. I looked like a woman coming home, but I felt like a trespasser. I drove to my mother's house without taking my suitcase from the trunk. Her place was 20 minutes south, in a subdivision where every yard had gravel, 3 desert shrubs, and 1 decorative boulder no one had asked for. I had grown up in that house. I knew the smell of the hallway, the sound of the old ceiling fan, the crack in the kitchen tile shaped like a river. My younger brother Caleb was sitting at the kitchen table when I walked in. He did not look surprised to see me. That was the second moment my stomach dropped. Caleb had always been the storm our family built shelters around. When he was 16 and totaled my mother's car, he was overwhelmed. When he quit community college after 3 weeks, he was finding himself. When he borrowed money from my grandmother and never paid it back, he was under pressure. When he started a small contracting business without insurance, permits, or a real plan, he was ambitious. When that business failed, he owed money to nearly everyone who had ever trusted him. I knew some of the numbers. I did not know all of them because my mother had learned to hide his disasters from me until she needed me to help clean them up. For years, I had been the responsible daughter. That sounds like a compliment until you realize it is also a job title no one asked you to accept. I was the one who checked interest rates before buying a car. I was the one who read contracts before signing. I was the one who said no to vacations I could not afford. I was the one who bought a small adobe house outside Reno at 31, not because it was glamorous, but because the mortgage made sense, the roof was solid, and the sunrise over the ridge made me feel like I had finally built something that belonged to me. My family called that cold. My mother said I thought too much. Caleb said I acted like money was a religion. My aunt once told me, at Thanksgiving, that I would be happier if I stopped treating life like a spreadsheet. Maybe they were right about some of it. I did like order. I liked savings accounts, emergency funds, and clear titles. I liked knowing where things stood. I had spent too many years watching chaos get renamed as love, and I did not want to live that way. So when I bought the house, I did something most people in my family thought was dramatic. I spoke to an attorney. Not because I expected war. Not because I distrusted everyone. But because a mentor at my first consulting job had once told me, the time to build a fence is before the cattle get out. At the time, I laughed. Then I listened. My house was purchased through Sagebrush Ridge Holdings, LLC. I was the sole member. The operating agreement required my direct approval, attorney verification, and specific documentation before any transfer could happen. It sounded boring. It sounded excessive. It sounded like paperwork that would sit in a folder forever. That folder was sitting in a fireproof box in my closet. Or at least, I hoped it still was. My mother sat across from me. Caleb leaned back in his chair with that loose, careless posture he used when he wanted everyone to think he was not scared. There was a manila envelope on the table between them. I did not sit down. My mother touched the envelope with 2 fingers. "I need you to listen before you react," she said. That sentence is never the beginning of something fair. I asked her again why my garage code had been changed. Caleb made a sound under his breath, almost a laugh. My mother shot him a look, then turned back to me. "Your brother was in trouble." I remember staring at the envelope. It had a coffee stain near one corner and a blue stamp from an escrow office I did not recognize. "He had people threatening legal action," she continued. "There were liens coming. There were calls. He could have lost everything." I looked at Caleb. He looked at the table. That was new. Caleb usually had a defense ready before anyone accused him of anything. My mother kept talking. Her voice had that smooth, practiced tone she used when she had already decided she was the victim in the room. "I tried to reach you. I had been in Eastern Oregon for 12 days, consulting on a solar installation near a cattle ranch outside Burns. The cell service was bad in parts, but not non-existent. I had checked in every night. I had answered emails. I had spoken to my project manager, my bookkeeper, and even the pharmacy about a prescription refill. My mother had not tried to reach me." I said that. She looked hurt, as if the truth had been rude. "You were working," she said. "And I knew you would make it difficult." There it was. Not, "I knew it was wrong." Not, "I knew I had no right." "I knew you would make it difficult." Caleb finally looked up. "Mom did what she had to do." I turned to him slowly. "What did she do?" My mother opened the envelope. Inside were copies of documents. I saw the address of my house. I saw a sale price. I saw signatures. I saw my mother's name written in places it should never have been. For a few seconds, the room made no sound at all. Then my mother said, "We sold the house." "We." That was the word that stayed with me. Not I. Not Caleb. Not the agent. We. As if my home had been a family appliance no one wanted anymore. As if the years I spent saving, fixing, painting, paying, and protecting had been a group project they could vote on while I was away. I looked at the papers again. My eyes kept catching pieces of language. Authorization. Family representative. Emergency hardship. Seller consent. None of it made sense. My mother kept explaining. She said a broker knew someone who could move quickly. She said the buyers were already approved. She said the money had cleared faster than expected. She said Caleb's creditors had been paid just enough to stop the worst of it. She said it like she had put out a fire. I felt something cold move through my chest. "You sold my house," I said. My mother folded her hands. "You have to understand the situation." "I understand the sentence." "Marin, don't be cruel." That word hit harder than I expected. Cruel. I had driven straight from a worksite, still wearing dust on my boots, to find out my family had sold my home without my permission. And somehow, in the first 10 minutes, I was already being asked not to be cruel. That is how some families train you. They cross the line, then hand you the shame for noticing. Caleb pushed his chair back. "It is not like you have kids." I looked at him. He shrugged. "You can start over. You always do. I have people depending on me." Caleb had no children. He had an ex-girlfriend, 2 unpaid subcontractors, a truck he could not afford, and a talent for making other people feel responsible for his panic. My mother did not correct him. That hurt more than what he said. I asked where they expected me to sleep that night. My mother's face changed. For 1 second, I saw the answer before she softened it. "You can stay here for a while." Caleb smiled. Not a big smile. Just enough. And then he said, "Looks like the responsible one finally needs help." I thought I would cry. I thought I would yell. I thought my hands would shake so badly I would have to sit down. But none of that happened. Instead, I felt calm. Not peaceful. Not forgiving. Calm in the way the desert gets calm before a hard wind comes over the ridge. I reached for one of the copies in the envelope and read the signature block again. Then I looked at my mother. Who told you that you could sign for Sagebrush Ridge Holdings? Her eyebrows pulled together. What? The LLC, I said. Who told you that you had authority to sign anything on behalf of the LLC? Caleb's smile faded. My mother blinked twice. I signed as your mother. I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny in it. That is not a legal role. She had to do something, Caleb snapped. No, I said. She chose to do something. Those are different. My mother's mouth tightened. Marin, this is not the time to act superior. I am not acting superior. I am telling you the sale is not valid. The kitchen went still. I placed the paper back on the table. The property is not held in my personal name. It belongs to Sagebrush Ridge Holdings, LLC. I am the sole member. You are not listed anywhere in the operating agreement. You do not have power of attorney. You do not have signing authority. You cannot authorize a sale because you are my mother. Caleb stood up. I did not move. My mother looked down at the documents as if they might rearrange themselves into something safer. But the escrow office accepted it, she said. They accepted something false. I did not lie. You signed documents saying you had authority you did not have. I was trying to save your brother. There it was again. The emotional emergency. The old family permission slip. The idea that fear could turn wrong into right if the person crying was loud enough. I looked at Caleb. How much? He did not answer. How much of the money is gone? My mother looked away. That was answer enough. I picked up my phone and called my attorney from the kitchen. My mother told me not to be dramatic. Caleb told me I was making everything worse. I stood beside the counter where I had eaten cereal before school, where my mother used to pack lunches, where Caleb once cried because he did not make the baseball team. I stood in the middle of all that history and listened to the phone ring. When my attorney answered, I said, Daniel, someone sold a property owned by my LLC without authorization. He did not ask if I was joking. Good attorneys do not waste time with disbelief. Within 20 minutes, I had photographed every page in the envelope. Within an hour, Daniel had the documents. By the next morning, he had contacted the escrow company, the title insurer, and the broker involved in the sale. By noon, the sale was under review. By the next day, the funds that had not already been dispersed were frozen. That was when my mother called me crying. Not because she understood what she had done. Because the consequences had arrived. She said the broker had misunderstood. She said the title company should have checked. She said Caleb's creditors were calling again. She said I was humiliating the family. I listened from a motel room off the highway because I still could not enter my own house. There is a specific kind of loneliness that comes from being right and still having nowhere to sleep. I had proof. I had legal standing. I had an attorney. I had the operating agreement everyone had mocked years earlier. And still, my clothes were in the trunk, my toothbrush was in a plastic cup by a motel sink, and my mother was telling relatives I had chosen paperwork over family. For the first week, people called. An aunt said I should think about my brother's future. A cousin said houses come and go, but blood is forever. A family friend from church said my mother had been under stress and deserved grace. No one asked what it felt like to stand outside your own home and realize the people who knew your garage code had treated your life like an emergency fund. No one asked if I was eating. No one asked if I was sleeping. They asked if I could forgive quickly enough to make everyone else comfortable. The legal process moved slower than my anger. Daniel explained each step in a voice so steady it made me want to scream. The buyers had to be notified. Their lender had to be notified. The title insurer had to investigate. The escrow file had to be examined. Signatures had to be compared against the LLC records. The buyers were not investors. They were not villains waiting to profit from my disaster. They were a young couple named Aaron and Elise. They had been renting a cramped apartment in Sparks. They were in the middle of an adoption process. They had already imagined a nursery in the second bedroom, the one I used as an office. When Daniel told me that, I sat on the edge of the motel bed and covered my face. That was the part my mother and Caleb had not considered. They had not just hurt me. They had pulled strangers into their lie. It would have been easier if everyone on the other side had been greedy. It would have been cleaner if the buyers had ignored red flags or pushed too hard. But they were people who had believed the documents in front of them. They were people who thought they were buying a home, not entering the blast radius of a family's dysfunction. For the first time, my anger had nowhere simple to go. I still wanted my house back. I still wanted the sale unwound. I still wanted the truth recorded in every file that had been touched by a false signature. But I also wanted Aaron and Elise made whole. Daniel worked with their attorney. The title insurer became involved quickly once the authority issue was clear. The broker stopped calling me directly after Daniel sent one letter that was polite enough to be dangerous. My mother tried to visit the motel on the 8th day. I did not open the door. She stood outside and said, "I am your mother." I stood on the other side, barefoot on ugly carpet, and said, "That is not a key." She went quiet. For most of my life, that sentence would have been impossible for me. I would have opened the door. I would have listened. I would have absorbed her fear until it became my responsibility. I would have found a way to make her feel better, even while I was the one bleeding. But something had changed. Maybe it changed when Caleb smiled at the kitchen table. Maybe it changed when I saw my mother's signature on a document that should never have held her name. Maybe it changed when everyone called to ask me for mercy before anyone called to ask me for the truth. On the 10th day, Caleb sent me a text. It said, "You win. Hope it was worth it." I stared at those words for a long time. Win. As if getting back what was mine made me greedy. As if stopping fraud was a game. As if he had not slept under a roof my discipline helped protect for years, borrowed money he did not repay, accepted rescues he did not earn, and still believed the final injury belonged to him. I did not answer. Some messages are not sent to be understood. They are sent to pull you back into the old role. The responsible one. The fixer. The sister who can take it. I was done taking it. 3 weeks after I came back from Oregon, the transaction was officially unwound. Aaron and Elise received their funds back through the title process. Their attorney sent Daniel a note saying they were devastated, but grateful the fraud had been found before they moved in. I cried when I read that. Not the dramatic kind of crying people imagine after a victory. It was quiet and sudden. I sat in my car outside the grocery store with a carton of eggs in the passenger seat, reading one sentence over and over. They were grateful the fraud had been found. That was when I understood the full shape of what had happened. My paperwork had protected me, but it had also protected them from building a life on top of a lie. The house was restored to Sagebrush Ridge Holdings, LLC. The locks were changed again, this time by a locksmith I hired. The garage code was reset. The broker's office stopped responding to my mother. The title insurer handled what it needed to handle. There were discussions about civil claims, reimbursement, and damages that I cannot fully describe. Caleb's debts did not disappear. My mother's explanations stopped sounding like explanations and started sounding like fear wearing different clothes. She called me one evening about a month later. I answered because I had decided silence did not need to be permanent to be firm. She sounded smaller. "I thought you would help him," she said. I looked around my kitchen. My kitchen. The same pale cabinets. The same chipped mug by the sink. The same window facing the ridge. "I have helped him," I said. "Many times. He is your brother." "I know. Then how can you do this?" I closed my eyes. "Mom, I am not doing this to him. I am stopping what you did to me." She cried then. I do not know if it was guilt, fear, or exhaustion. Maybe all three. I wanted to comfort her. That instinct was still there, like a bruise you forget about until you press it. But I did not move toward it. I told her I loved her. I told her I hoped Caleb got real help. I told her I would not discuss the legal case without my attorney. I told her she could not come to my house without asking first. The silence after that was long. Then she said, "You sound like a stranger." I said, "No. I sound like myself." That was the saddest truth of all. Sometimes the version of you with boundaries feels like a stranger to the people who benefited from you not having any. Caleb and I have not spoken since his text. I do not know what he tells people. I imagine I am the villain in his version. I imagine he says I cared more about property than blood, more about documents than family, more about being right than being kind. For a while, that bothered me. Then I realized something simple. People who need you to have no boundaries will always call your boundaries cruelty. That does not make them right. It only tells you what they miss. They miss access. They miss the old door. They miss the version of you who opened it every time. When I finally spent my first night back in the house, I did not sleep much. I walked from room to room like I was checking on someone after an illness. I touched the door frame in the hallway. I opened the closet where the fireproof box sat untouched. I took out the operating agreement and placed it on the kitchen table. It was not beautiful. It was not sentimental. It was not the kind of thing anyone frames. It was pages of plain language, signatures, dates, and rules. But that night, it felt like the most compassionate thing I had ever done for my future self. Years earlier, when nothing was wrong, I had paid an attorney for advice my family laughed at. I had asked questions that made me feel paranoid. I had signed documents that seemed too formal for a little house outside Reno. I had built a fence before the cattle got out. And when the storm came, that fence held. I am not telling you this because everyone needs the same structure I used. I am not an attorney, and this is not legal advice. But I am telling you that if you own a home, a business, land, equipment, or anything you worked too hard to lose, you should talk to someone qualified before there is a crisis. Not after your family is desperate. Not after someone signs your name. Not after a buyer is packing boxes. Not after you are standing in a driveway with a suitcase, pressing a code that no longer works. Do it while life is boring. Do it when everyone is getting along. Do it before anyone needs your assets more than they respect your permission. Because paperwork is not just paperwork. Sometimes it is the only witness in the room that cannot be guilt, rushed, charmed, or bullied. It does not care who is crying. It does not care who says family comes first. It only says what was agreed to when everyone still had the chance to act with integrity. My relationship with my mother is different now. We speak, but carefully. She asks before visiting. I answer when I can. Some days, I miss the old ease between us, even though I know part of that ease was built on me swallowing things I should have said out loud. I do not hate her. That surprises some people. But hate would keep me tied to the kitchen table, to Caleb's smile, to the envelope, to the moment my mother thought being my mother gave her the right to sell my home. I do not want to live there. I want to live here. In the house I bought. In the life I built. Behind a door that opens because I allow it to. A few weeks ago, I stood in the driveway at sunset. The Nevada sky had turned that deep copper color that makes everything look both ending and beginning at the same time. The wind chimes moved softly above the porch. I typed the new garage code and the door lifted. It was such a small sound. A motor. A chain. A panel rolling upward. But I stood there and cried. Not because I had lost everything. Because I had come so close. Because the people I loved had mistaken access for ownership. Because a younger version of me, the one who was called cold and difficult and too careful, had quietly saved my life when no one was watching. So if this story reaches you at the right time, let it be a sign. Check the deed. Read the agreement. Ask the uncomfortable question. Call the attorney. Protect the thing you are building before someone else decides their emergency gives them a right to it. And if this made you think of your own family, your own house, your own business, or the boundary you keep postponing, then stay with this channel. These stories are not just about betrayal. They're about the moment a person finally understands that protecting yourself is not the opposite of love. Sometimes, it is the first honest act of love you ever offer yourself.